Hello and welcome everyone. You are here for 9 Lenses and SalesIntel's webinar, 3 steps to crush your sales discovery. And I'm so excited to be here. My name is Ariana Shannon. I'm the marketing director here at SalesIntel, and I'm joined by Tom Hessen, the CEO of 9 Lenses. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tom. Give us like a quick 60-second introduction of yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Ariana. So yes, as she mentioned, my name's Tom Hessen. I'm the CEO of 9 Lenses. I run a company that is a cloud SaaS interactive assessment platform, which we'll talk about briefly today. And we work with both large and small companies all over the globe. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you, Ariana, and the group.
Awesome.
So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I've always loved meeting other people in the space because, of course, SalesIntel and what we do of being one of the best data providers, the data is only good as how you're leveraging it. So I love having these sales and marketing conversations with other people. So yeah, to get into our agenda, going to go over the top reasons why sales teams don't do discovery right or are struggling with it. There's a lot to unpack there. Then we'll get into of course, the 3 steps to crush your sales discovery, and then go over a quick case study and our Q&As. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the challenges. So what is not working that you're seeing with some of the sales teams that you've worked with, Tom?
Yeah, so sales discovery, let's just kind of define what that is for a second so that way we're on the same page. But the way I define sales discovery is oftentimes the first opportunity where a sales rep has the opportunity to really speak with the customer about their business, what's going on, what's working, what's not, what are their needs, why do they call us, and really try to learn, is there a real sales opportunity here? And so at the end of this meeting, ideally you come away with a clear idea as to whether or not you can or cannot help this prospect. They are or they are not a good fit. That ideally you've identified a sales opportunity with, clear next steps. But there's a lot of challenges and pitfalls on that first, usually 30-minute meeting. Sometimes it's an hour if you're lucky. But we want to talk a little bit about that. And I think the first challenge is that people come to this meeting with different expectations. And if you think about it from the prospect's standpoint, they may have clicked request a demo on a software website, which led them to this first meeting. So they may be expecting to see software, whereas some sales processes don't show software in the first meeting, which I personally agree with. But they, maybe there's an SDR and they have to answer 5 qualification criteria before they can get you to a second first meeting with the account executive. So depending on the sales process, but oftentimes there's people coming to this meeting with very different expectations of how that 30 minutes is going to be used. And oftentimes that can create kind of friction or drag where you're not able to really get into the heart of what is valuable to both the seller and the buyer in this case. So that's the first problem. Does that make sense, Ariana?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had that before because as the director, I'm constantly being asked to go through different tech or to sit on different demos. And I especially love hearing what you have in this because I've experienced at least all of these, all of these and more in some of the discovery meetings. And that's, of course, like, what's the expectation? And it goes back to, hey, did you do a follow-up? Did you confirm what this meeting was about beforehand? Because I know we're all guilty of setting calendar invites and then going, what the heck is this about?
Exactly.
Why am I meeting this person? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be getting out of this? So yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and so so you have this meeting with these different expectations, and now as a salesperson, right? This is usually where you get to ask all these different questions, trying to figure out what is really going on with this business. Why are they calling us? What do they need? Can I help them? Because you literally know almost nothing about their business problems. You may know, the person's name, their role. They may have typed something in their like demo request or contact us or whatever it may be, or they downloaded an ebook and you sent them an email and they took a meeting. But usually there's a big gap between what the buyer knows about their problem and think they know about the problem and the salesperson. And so this 30-minute meeting is oftentimes designed to just learn and close that gap. But there's a massive gap that exists between the seller and the buyer. And more often than not now, these buyers are learning more and more and more about your solution before they ever talk to sales. So they may have it nailed. They may be way off base. You have no idea kind of where they're coming into this conversation about what they think they need. Oftentimes it's not 100% correct. And so now the sales rep has to do all this stuff kind of on the fly to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Or even if you're coming into that meeting with assumptions, it's more or less, or I know of what we work with our team is like, hey, did you actually check? Because with the way that our processes work, we have the technographic data and all of that information. So going into the meeting, we already have access to, hey, we have a very good idea of what your tech stack is. We know kind of the size of your organization. So all of that should really be done at a higher level. And it's more or less like you're saying, getting to the business challenges of, okay, we understand that you have this already and we're just confirming that, but then opening that line of questioning to actually figure it out and just making sure your assumptions are correct. Because from there, you can either very quickly say, oh, this isn't actually a fit at all, and we're just kind of wasting each other's time, or it can be very helpful in creating that second step and getting them further down the
Right.
funnel.
And rarely do you ever know what the real person's business problems are until you talk to them, right? Because they don't share that. There's no really way to, they may again put a little note in a box somewhere, but you really don't know. Like, did the boss ask them to just call and request, or there's a million different reasons why people take meetings or request to talk to a sales rep, and you just don't know until you get in there and get under the hood, which again just puts the sales rep kind of in this I have to ask 1,000 questions to figure it out in that meeting, which again is not a great experience. But like in those questions, that's this third point, you know, that prospect is just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and answer all your questions. And it's upon the salesperson to hear those answers to figure out, well, what does that really mean? Oh, what they really mean is this thing over here. And oh, we've solved it with this other customer. So there's 1,000 dots that have to be connected in real time in a moment's notice. And this is really hard. I mean, if we all
Yeah.
listen to the same discovery call, we all could probably come away with different interpretations of what their needs
Mhm.
are, their problems are, how we should then tailor the conversation based on what they just said. So there's a real art, unfortunately, to that third point, which makes it so difficult because like how well you understand business, the buyer's
Mhm.
industry and their role and their, how empathetic you are to that. There's a million and one different things go into being able to do this well. And that's why like sales organizations as a whole struggle, because you just can't teach all of this stuff into a single individual and help them figure out and connect all these dots in real time on the fly and do it right,
Mhm.
and not kind of lead the customer down the wrong path, because you don't get a chance to do over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's the person that comes to you and either they're on the discovery, they've been sent by their decision maker and they're trying to figure it out, or they think they know what they're looking for. And then sometimes when you're on that call, it's having to decipher it like you'd said. And it makes me think back to when I used to help with a lot of graphic design elements. People would come to me and say, "Hey Ariana, we want to make this wonderful press kit. We're going to spend all this money on doing it and this is what we want to get out of it." And you have to stop and say, as that person trying to help them, well, I understand where you're going, but this isn't actually going to help you achieve that goal. By knowing your product or service and the use cases frontwards and backwards, that's really where you can provide the most insight and put them on the right path. So whether they come to you and say, hey, like this is what I'm really looking for, it's not it like you said, it's that higher intelligence and experience that comes with just doing discovery over and over and over again to say, okay, this is what they're telling me what they want, but this is what they actually need, and being able to make that judgment call.
That's right. And there's a lot of judgment there. And that's where,
Yeah.
a lot of things fall down because not everyone has the same judgment. And then for a variety of reasons, it could be they're new to the company. They could be new to that industry that they're selling into, maybe a new product that you're trying to sell and you don't really understand the value prop. But that's where a lot of stuff falls down. And then the fourth one is just
Mhm.
kind of getting alignment on the next steps, because again, ideally you can try to come to some mutual understanding. Again, that's where you're trying to get is aligning these expectations, kind of cutting through the noise, and saying, you know what, here's how we can help you. This is what I recommend as the next step, and them saying yes or no, or thanks, send me the deck. I'm going to go try to talk to some people. I mean, there's a million and one different reasons and ways that there are follow-ups and next steps into any coming out of every discovery call, but oftentimes there's not real clear definitive actions and timeline and things of that nature, which again, if you don't do those right, this meeting
Mhm.
could go south, at the most critical
Yeah.
point, which is what are we going to do next?
Yeah, and even when you go in there, and even if you do have some of these steps of like, oh, this is the discovery call for this, these are my next steps, but you get on the call and you realize, oh, this isn't actually what this is about at all, or we've gone in this direction. How do you adapt in the situation to either salvage a call or to make it that much better and customizable for the buyer journey and experience?
That's right.
Awesome. So with that, go ahead and jump into the 3 steps to the better sales
Okay, so
discovery.
3 steps. All right, step number 1, learn about the prospect's business challenges before the meeting. Okay, we're going to talk about how to do this because this is not easy, nor is it common. But just think about what most of the meeting is done, or is most of the time today is just trying to learn. A sales rep is asking questions, the buyer's answering them. Question, answer. And you're just trying to kind of figure out where to go next based on the questions kind of in real time. But if you actually knew about their business problems in advance, not just what they think the business problem is, but what you know to be the business problem. Imagine if you could do that question and answering stuff in advance, and then you came to this meeting more prepared and knowledgeable about what their needs are and what their real needs are. You're going to make this meeting substantially more valuable to both the buyer and to your sales process. And we'll talk about that. But let's put that on pause for a second because I know there's a lot of questions about, well, how in the heck would you do that? We're going to cover that here in a moment. But this
Yep.
is key, learning about their challenges in advance before the meeting.
Yeah, and like you said, that's going beyond just what you can figure out through technographic, firmographic, salesographic information, because that's what got you to this point. You've taken all this data and all this information to identify this person to get them to the meeting. But I love what you're saying of you can make assumptions, but you really don't know the specific pain point that's going to drive the sale home for you until you have that conversation
Right.
in the
In a lot of
discovery.
complex deals, the customer may not even know what their real problem is. So you have to, just say like, here's my business situations. And you need to be able to like, as an expert, be like, oh, well, that's a problem and that's a problem. And they may not even have known that those two things were
Mhm.
problems because they just don't know the problem they're trying to solve very well. So again, you're just trying to really understand their business. Whether it's a perceived issue from there or you know it to be an issue and they may not even know it, but you want to know that all in advance. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, step 2. Now, this is for making discovery um, scalable within your sales team. So this is a bit of a sales process. So again, not every person has the right backgrounds, experience, business understanding to connect all these dots in real time. So if you know in advance, or let's say there's 50 potential problems that you could uncover, or maybe it's 10 or 15, you know, your organization be coaching and giving guidance to your sales reps on how to navigate those conversations based on those pre-identified challenges. So if these are the top 3 challenges or this is your top challenge, ask these questions, talk about this case study, explain it this way. And so that way there's a clear way for that seller to connect that business problem to our value prop using these questions, these statements, these examples, whatever it may be. And now you're really able to give that sales rep exactly what they need to have the conversation with that specific buyer. This is not just general sales enablement, like where you're just talking about, competitive cards and value prop and product demos. It's being able to tie your value prop to a specific problem that keeps coming up, and teaching your team how to do that kind of at scale, whether it's one person on your sales team or 1,000. You need to be able to connect it to those identified problems instead of just letting the rep figure it all out like we talked about in the midst of that conversation. Again, we'll
No,
talk about what that looks like.
yeah, and absolutely. It puts it like you're saying, it takes some of this information and puts rails on it. So that way you're not missing any out key points, because you might have someone say, "Well, tell me about what you do." And you can remember them, but in the situation you might miss one here or there, and maybe that's the one that was really applicable. So go ahead and jump to the next one.
Okay, so then step 3, this is where it all comes together. So their business problems in advance. You know how to navigate the conversation with that particular buyer. Now you spend the vast majority of your time focused on their pain points, right? Whether they know them or not, you say, these are your issues, or this is what we think your issues are. Here's what we understand. And let's talk about how to solve those. And now you're not spending 20 minutes asking questions and telling a few stories. It's now saying, okay, these are the problems that I see you have. You can confirm them, validate them, and then spend the time talking about how you solve them and the outcomes that are driven by solving their specific problems. And this is where the value is created in the sales discussion. Most discovery calls are designed to be valuable for the seller because they're learning. It's more of a one-way value exchange because the rep is just asking, maybe telling a
Mhm.
couple of stories and sharing some things, but it's really designed for the rep to learn and not to teach. And so in this case, if we can tailor the conversations using steps 1 and step 2, it's going to be much more valuable to the buyer. And as a result, you're going to be able to accelerate that opportunity. Like, one, you're going to be able to source more opportunities, right? Because now you've been able to, like, with precision, pinpoint their problems, talk about them, confirm them, and talk about solutions and outcomes. And when you do that, you're going to be able to systematically source more opportunities in those calls. Like Ariana, I thought that was great. Those rails, like this is a programmatic method for how to systematically source opportunities. And then because you're adding more value in that first meeting and you're talking about outcomes and how their business is going to improve as a result of that, you're now really, that's like a second or third conversation. And you're having that in the first, because again, the first one is usually just about learning, and then you have to come back and talk more and talk more. This is really designed to help start engaging the buyer in the solution with those known problems. And that has proven time and time again that you will get through the sales cycle faster than the traditional method of 1,000 questions and connect some dots.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting all that information that you're saying ahead of time and being able to create a very tailored focus element. So I know that I've been on demos where I'm being shown everything in the kitchen sink, which can be helpful, but it requires me as a participant to be very actively listening and paying attention and trying to figure out how you can help me versus you just being very pointed and saying, I hear your problems. Let me show you this, like A, B, and C of how I'm going to make your job easier, how I'm going to help your company get its ROI, and how we're going to move forward together.
Precisely.
So, and we've talked about this a lot, but I'll go ahead and jump so you can actually get into the meat
Okay,
of
so
that.
how do you do all this, right? And I'm going to introduce kind of maybe something new to you guys and gals. We um, use what's called an interactive assessment into our sales process. And so let me describe what that is, and we'll talk about the benefits. So if your customer, again, you schedule a meeting, they request a demo, they get a meeting on your calendar, right? How do you get to know about their business problems prior to the meeting? The way we do it at Nine Lenses for our own sales process and how we help other clients do it is you have what we call an interactive assessment designed around your business problem. So when we're selling to marketing leaders, we give them the Nine Lenses marketing funnel assessment. We say, before our meeting, answer these 10, 15 questions, and you're going to get an instant scorecard. You'll see that on the lower left instantly. So you answer these questions, you're going to get an instant scorecard from us on where you're doing well, where you can improve, some general recommendations in your biggest need areas, maybe comparison to other clients and benchmarks that we may have. And so the reason why they'll spend 5-7 minutes taking your assessment is that they're going to get instant value at the end of that experience, and they will gladly answer those questions for that touch of value. And when you say you're going to be able to now bring more value to them in the meeting because you're now prepared, substantially more about where their gaps are, their needs are, and they're more educated about their business themselves because the questions that you ask, the recommendations that you give, you're now demonstrating your expertise. You're framing up the problem in the way you want it to be framed. And now they're more aware of those challenges heading into that first call, All right, so that's the first point. You're educating the customer about their challenges and you're giving them recommendations. It starts with adding more value to the customer. And then secondarily, you're educating the sales rep about the needs and challenges of the buyer, right? Because they've now answered 10, 15 questions about their business in a pretty detailed manner. And you now know where they're strong, where they're weak. And again, whether they know what the problem is or not, you know what the business situation is and where the, and what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. And at least in our technology, we can program what advice and guidance to give to the sales rep based on that buyer's needs, right? Ask these questions, talk about this case study, bring up this scenario. And so now using the assessment results and the coaching provided by your company, right, through our technology, you can now, as a sales rep, tailor and personalize that discussion, focusing in on the pain points. Because again, the buyer's more educated and the seller's more educated. And when those two people meet, it's going to be a much more fruitful discussion, really focused on where the business is, and where it needs to be. And then again, that just is shown to source more opportunities and accelerate the sales cycle as a result of that higher value exchange in both directions.
Absolutely. And especially where I'm seeing this, like even on just the screenshots that you have there, uh, I know in some cases where maybe you ask someone, well, like how effective is this channel for you? Or what's the specific metric? When you're trying to get into the percentages and into more of the data of it, so like how much ROI are you seeing from this, or how much percent are you wanting to grow to it? You can get a lot of like really nitty gritty data that you can point back to and say, hey, we actually did help you do this, or we have grown this by this percent. So it can also, I could see where this would be effective not only in that first discovery call, but then later when you're having future discussions of how have we helped you.
Yeah, and the onboarding and
Mhm.
precisely. And I think people have tried this, right? So there's not been, I don't think there's anything new under the sun. But in this case, like people may have created a survey, here, answer
Yeah.
these questions. I had a venture capital uh, firm reach out to me last week, and as part of the meeting, they wanted me to fill out a form of just like 8 questions or 10 questions. And I'm like, good try. I like that because again, that's the business that we're in. But there was nothing back for me. They were not going to tell me, oh, based on your business size, you're more likely to do this, that, and the other, or you're ahead of most companies. Like, there's no value exchange. It's me just
Mm.
sharing stuff in advance, which is helpful to them. But what's in it for me, right? So in this case, as our buyers, what's in it for them is that they get this very personalized scorecard about their business, which is why they're trying to call you anyway. Can you help me? Can you solve my problems? And we're already starting down that journey ahead of the first call because they're getting something of instant value right after that 5-minute investment. And that's the magic here, is giving them something of value in return for that ask that you're making. And yes, we do see people do this. We do this in our own sales process. Not every single person does it every single time, but that again shows you kind of their level of interest kind of coming into the meeting. Um,
Sure.
and we do this with whether they request a demo or if it's an SDR. We always ask people to do this in advance, for all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love where you brought that out of if they don't engage with it, that tells you. But also want to jump into this example with the Pedowitz Group, which I love that you brought them because I actually know this organization. I've talked with them a couple of times, so I love seeing friendly faces
Yes.
that are doing well.
So the Pedowitz Group, and this is just one example. Jeff Pedowitz is very well known in the marketing space. So they are a B2B marketing consulting or advisory firm. They work with large enterprises, and they came to us a few years ago and said, hey, we want to put an assessment on our website. And we did that. They had the methodology. We helped them kind of create the experience, and just like we do that. And so they started driving, both their sales teams to use it with their prospects as well as marketing from their marketing channels. And the outcome was just mind blowing. I mean, you can see kind of in the quote there, if you wanted to visit our website, you can see the full like 2-minute clip of him talking. But we unequivocally know that we've generated millions of dollars from our assessment. And that speaks to the value exchange, right? The more you can educate your own buyer, demonstrate your own expertise, have more meaningful discussions in the sales process, they're going to want to do business with you guys more so than somebody else. And you
Mhm.
can see the 3 points there. They had a higher conversion rate, right? Because again, that shows that you're able to diagnose more problems more effectively, kind of at scale. The deal size was larger. This was a bit surprising to me because, when you step back and think about it, if you're assessing kind of the entire business, sometimes customers just come and say, I've got this problem, and they want to solve that one problem, but it's hard to kind of back them out and say, well, tell me about your entire business, because that may be connected to some other thing. And so what Jeff and team were able to see was that, what, you've got bigger problems than the one that you just called us about. And so being able to kind of solve a more holistic problem, or things again that the customer may not have known, was paramount. Just having more intelligence about their customer, and you probably wouldn't have been able to figure all that out, kind of heading into a discovery call, especially when you're just letting your rep kind of do their own assessment. Because again, what I'm thinking about is what a rep is doing in discovery is really just an assessment, but each rep is doing it on their own different way and different process. Here, we're programatizing it where the value is uniform and consistent to the buyer and to the seller. And with the guidance, it just makes it so much more effective. And you can see that in the win rate, because when you're adding value at every step of the way, you're going to see more people buy from you than your competitors, because you're just adding value at every stage. And so this is just a great example from Jeff. And again, we're doing this with SaaS companies, service companies, large and small, Fortune 500 down to, millions of dollars, sort of smaller SMBs. But it's always selling a complex product, whether it's a service or software. This is not for transactional selling. This is where education comes into play. Typically larger dollar size, average sales price, where you're educating
Mm.
your buyer. Maybe there's multiple buyers in that process. So just in case there wasn't any, kind of question as to when to use these, it's really for more of a, traditional enterprise or complex sale with a higher ASP.
Oh, wonderful. Sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing the information. We'll go ahead and open it up to our live Q&A. For those of us who are here, please feel free to pop those into the chat or into the Q&A section, and we will go through as many of them as we can.
Looks like we have one person raising their hand. I'm not sure what that, okay, what that, and
So if you're raising your hand, I can see that you've raised your hand, but I can't really do much anything else to identify you. So if you do have a question, it's best that you just pop that into the chat or into the QA.
okay, so there is a question here. Is there a trial available? If you can just go one slide. There's not a trial, because a trial,
Sure.
there are use cases. So if you, to the bottom here, if you go to 9lenses.com/marketing and then that extra slash, you can actually experience what we use in our own discovery. So we call it the marketing funnel assessment. Again, we use this with our marketing buyers. You'll actually see our own technology, but more importantly, our assessment on top of our technology. Like our clients, their assessments look different than ours, but your assessment would be different than ours. But this is just one way to experience it. Trials are a little bit more challenging because you actually have to create an assessment in order to trial something, and so that's a different conversation. What solution are you trying to solve, and so on. We do pilots. We don't necessarily do trials, just because that's you have to kind of create the content. We help you do that. It's not as hard as it sounds, but it's not just log in and you know throw up an assessment. That usually has not worked out well, just given the way we kind of want to see our customers do it. Um,
Yeah, they'll have to do their own assessment to figure out how you can best help them and identify
yeah,
their problem. So
that's right.
you're
That's right.
drinking your own champagne.
That's right. So yeah, that's right. So take our marketing funnel assessment is a great way to experience just how it looks and feels, and you should get a instant score on how well you're converting leads into customers. So our goal is to give you some value there with some recommendations. Um,
Looks like we had another question around how do you tailor the questions to various industries?
That's a great question. So if you're a larger organization that, let's say, has multiple products or multiple solutions or the same solution packaged differently for different industries, so you could have, let's say, the same assessment, but maybe 10% of it is tweaked. Let's say you're selling Salesforce, and you're selling Salesforce to different industries. So you could have your CRM health check. Right. I love these kind of health check concepts where you are going into your clients, seeing how effective is your CRM adding value to your business. Now, obviously, it may be differently configured for a B2B SaaS company versus like an oil and gas company. And so you may have the same methodology around your assessment, but the questions may vary. So you can have different versions of the assessment, or you could actually pick what industry that you're in, and you'd see a slightly different variation of the questions that's carried all the way through the scoring and recommendation. So there's different ways to kind of handle that depending on how different um, the assessment is. We generally like to see, you guys start with one kind of core to your business, and maybe there's a couple of tweak based on a persona or an industry there.
Awesome.
So would you have multiple frameworks to run various campaigns? So there's a lot of thought that goes into, an assessment. So you could have multiple to run different campaigns, but I generally like to try to bring as much through a single assessment as you can, and get a lot of runway out of that. So we use our marketing funnel assessment um, for pretty much anything marketing related. Even though it may not be like 100% match, maybe it's 80%, it's still better off um, than trying to create something new every time, because there is some thought that has to go into the recommendations and the scoring system. Again, we help you with all of that, so you don't have to kind of drown trying to figure out how to build an assessment if you've never done it before. We guide you through that process, but I would encourage you not to do too many, just because it gets, you don't have to, and B, it's just more work.
Yeah, it's like when you start figuring out of how segmented can you go? Because that's always a question that I know of at the very top of the funnel that we're thinking about of, okay, we have all these people and these personas and we know of the areas that we can help, and how nuanced do you want to get? But yeah, definitely agree with you of start with just an MVP. There's maybe one, and then see how that's working for you. And as you see the need, you can create those then.
I think that's
Sweet.
always a good approach.
Yeah. So we've got one through Q&A. Says, hey guys, how would you approach discovery calls when they are set by outbound lead gen? It's a very good question, especially when you are a services firm which customized programs for a broad area like innovation.
Okay, so the way I would tackle that, so is you would come out with like your innovation capability assessment. Okay, and again, that's designed to be broad, right? You could touch on a lot of different things on innovation, right? But again, it's like they may have an innovation process, they may have, there's I guess, different things that you would be looking for into their innovation capability, people, process, technology, whatever, like their methodology to it. And so if there is an outbound program and you're booking meetings, I always book the meeting, get it on the calendar, right? I do not try to put any friction into that process. Just get it on the calendar. It's hard enough. Then usually, you may have a touch, one or two leading up to that, because they probably forgot why they took the meeting. Here, Ariana, was your point earlier. You may want to say, hey, we booked this meeting. Here's what we're going to talk about. This is why it's interesting, and then make the ask. And so, in advance of our conversation, we want you to take this, 7-minute assessment. Here's what you're going to get, and it's going to help me come better explain how we can help your business, and it's going to be more valuable for you. Right? Yes, it's going to help me, but that's not what I'm telling the customer. It's really going to be more valuable to them each and every time. And so I would still do it. You may have, some people will do it. We do this with lead gen, outbound lead gen, and if you just kind of explain the value, and again, the assessment should do that as well. If you see like an example of like our landing page of the assessment, you could have the name of the assessment, a video from, you know, the smartest person in your company explaining why it's valuable, what you're going to get out of it, and you know, the methodology that it covers, and what you're going to get in the end. And so you don't even have to necessarily do it, but you want to get them to that screen and then want to know the outcome of that, you know, that scorecard of that assessment. So that's just how I would do it. I would still ask. I would have them to, you know, whether it's your organization or the outbound lead gen, someone should be asking that prospect to take the assessment at some point leading up to the meeting, but after you book the meeting.
So we've got another question of, is this available as an add-in with SalesIntel or a separate sign up? Right now, I don't think we have an integration built out, Tom, but that's something that I know SalesIntel has an open API. I don't know if it's something you would necessarily connect, because where SalesIntel really comes in is the accuracy of the data and how you're prioritizing these people. So like through our systems, you can come in, like using an ABM as an example, you can come in and say, these are all of the technographic, firmographic information that we know about our ideal customer profile or your ICP. Then you can take those accounts, flip it into a contact search and say, okay, these are my buyer personas. Now you have a list of decision makers that is 95% accurate. It's been verified every 90 days, so you know that it's accurate. And you can get direct dial phones, you can get work mobiles, you can get all of the contact information to reach this person to then take the assessment. So we're more along the lines of saying, hey, this is everyone that you can address within your ICP. And these are also, if you start leveraging intent data or intent signals, to say these are people that are in your area and maybe are looking at your competitors. So if they're looking at your competitors, they're definitely a fit for you and they should be talking to you. Let's prioritize those and let's get those into the hands of the sales team so that they can get into the assessment. So I don't know if a direct integration would make sense. Again, we have the API and I know you could build it out, but would also love to get your thoughts on that if I missed anything.
Yeah, I mean, we're a SalesIntel customer, and you're right. We want to send this to people that are consuming content on our website, as well as people that we book meetings with directly using the contact information that we have. So I don't know that I see the immediate need for that, but it's something I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, hey, we can hook up with our partner team and explore that. It'll be a different call for us.
Now I see another question about the legal cloud platform. Okay, so you're right. If you know, I can imagine getting lawyers' time is hard to get. You can use these together on the phone. If it, depending, you could do it together. You could do it after the meeting, right? As a follow up kind of value touch. Say, hey, go take this. It's going to help you just, you know, see how well you're doing, or you know, things of that nature. I would always ask. I mean, there's nothing that, again, you're looking for like signals of intent and interest. And so if they really are interested in the problem that you're solving, someone in that law firm cares enough to, you know, take time. It's going to take investment. And so this to me is just another signal, but you could do it, you know, before the meeting. Again, you can ask once or twice, but that's probably all I would ask. And then if they don't, just do it in the meeting. And then, you know, you may not want to do it in the meeting. You're just going to do it the old-fashioned way, and then maybe you give it to them afterwards as a way for them to share it with their executives, or you know, you get the pitch deck, you get the assessment. Now it's a post-meeting value add rather than a pre-meeting.
That's a very good point, especially when it comes to people that it's hard to get a hold of. We also have another question just around tech stacks. So speaking about CRM, marketing, intent data, et cetera, what is your ideal tech stack and how would you build that? I'll go ahead and take a stab at this one. Honestly, it really comes down to the three core areas, which is your CRM, your map, and your SAP. So do you have a database, your CRM, your customer relationship management, where you can house all of this information and keep it as your source of truth? Do you have a marketing automation platform so that you can do those inbound motions to try to promote people to get into your systems? And then of course the sales automation platforms. So like the outreaches, the sales lofts, the I'm going blank. I feel like I've just been asked what my favorite movie was and it completely left my head. But then you have all of those. So it's really, are you enabling every area of your organization to be able to reach the right people and at scale? So those are like the three core elements. And then depending on how your company is approaching its growth, that's where you would add in extra elements. So again, ABM is a very hot topic. It's count-based marketing, a very broad approach. That's where you would bring in to say, okay, we're doing this strategy. Maybe we bring in an ABM platform so that we can manage all of these things that requires all of these high-level touches. Then we can start leveraging intent or a data provider to start filling this funnel and making sure that we're pushing everyone through it. And there was also a very specific question about where you integrate, Tom. So I'll let you answer
yeah,
that.
so we integrate with your marketing automation system today. There's always more in the funnel, HubSpot and Marketo. And then we integrate with Salesforce.com. So giving sales reps access as well as marketers access to this data. But happy to go into more detail on that in a subsequent discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, anytime you ask a professional what should be in your tech stack, you're going to get a million answers. But I promise you, it's going to come back to those three elements of, do you have a database to house all your information? Do you have a marketing platform to actually get your content and get your message out? And then do you have a sales automation platform so that you can not only do outreach at scale, but then also take that information, perfect your sequences, perfect your discovery. Like it all comes back to what your organization is trying to do. And I think we've gone through all the questions, Tom.
Yeah, and I know if we have any marketers on there, I mean, the beauty of this is assessments work just as well at the bottom of your marketing funnel as they do at the top of your sales funnel. So if you needed to kind of find some budget, whether it be sales or marketing, you've got some more friends over there in marketing that could easily use the asset in their own work streams and campaigns separately from the sales teams.
Oh, absolutely. All about marketing, all about sales and marketing working together. If you're not talking to that department, the other person, you really should. There's so much value to be added there. But that's a whole other webinar. That's a whole other topic to get into. But awesome. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us and participating in the questions. Here is our contact information. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And like I said, you'll get access to the deck and the recording in your inbox tomorrow. So thank you all very much and have a wonderful Cinco de Mayo.
Thank you, Ariana. My pleasure being here.